Triple H fires Drew McIntyre following his brutal attack on Cody Rhodes after WWE WrestlePalooza. Triple H just made the most controversial executive decision in WWE history. Drew McIntyre has been fired from WWE following his post-WrestlePalooza assault on Cody Rhodes that went so far beyond acceptable violence that the game had no choice but to terminate one of his top stars immediately. When you hear the specific details about what Drew did to Cody after their match ended, and the shocking way Triple H delivered the termination papers, you're going to be absolutely divided on whether this firing was justified punishment or a massive overreaction that just destroyed WWE's future. The backstage emergency meeting that led to Drew's termination lasted less than 20 minutes, but the ramifications are going to reshape WWE's entire landscape for years to come. Triple H didn't just fire Drew McIntyre, he made a statement that nobody in WWE is above the rules, regardless of their star power, drawing ability, or connection to management. But was this the right decision, or did the game just make the biggest mistake of his executive career by releasing someone who could become WWE's biggest threat as a free agent? What makes this termination so much more explosive is how it happened. Triple H personally walked into Drew's locker room with security personnel, WWE's head of legal, and termination paperwork already signed and processed. There was no discussion, no opportunity for Drew to explain or apologize, no chance for mediation or suspension as an alternative. This was a complete and immediate severing of the relationship that sent shockwaves through the entire roster. But here's what's going to make your blood boil with fury: the specific incident that triggered Drew's firing wasn't just the post-match attack itself, but what he did after officials had already separated him from Cody and were attempting to restore order. According to multiple witnesses whose jobs are now at risk for revealing this information, Drew broke free from security one final time and delivered a claymore kick to Cody that was so vicious and so clearly intended to cause serious injury that even hardened wrestlers watching backstage were genuinely horrified. The attack happened in the gorilla position after the show had gone off the air, meaning cameras weren't rolling and most fans in the arena had no idea what was transpiring. But WWE's internal security footage captured every horrifying second of Drew's final assault, and that footage is what sealed his fate when Triple H reviewed it in the emergency meeting that followed. "You're done. Pack your bags and get out of my building now." Triple H's words to Drew were reportedly delivered with such cold fury that everyone present understood there would be no negotiation or reconsideration. The game had made his decision, and nothing Drew could say would change the outcome. The finality in his voice made it clear that this wasn't just about one incident, it was about establishing boundaries that protect WWE's championships and top stars from uncontrolled violence. But Drew McIntyre's response to being fired was what made this situation go from shocking to absolutely insane. Instead of showing remorse or attempting to salvage his WWE career, Drew reportedly smiled and told Triple H that, "You just made the biggest mistake of your corporate life, and I'm going to prove it by becoming a bigger star without your company than I ever was working for you." The confidence and defiance in his statement revealed someone who genuinely believes his firing will be WWE's loss, not his. The most controversial aspect of this termination is the timing and the precedent it sets for how WWE handles talent who cross lines during heated rivalries. Many wrestlers and fans are arguing that Drew's attack, while excessive, was consistent with the intensity that WWE itself had been promoting for their feud. By firing Drew for taking things too far, is Triple H admitting that WWE's own storyline escalation created a situation that got out of control? Industry veterans are divided on whether this firing was justified or a massive overreaction that could hurt WWE's credibility and business interests. Some argue that protecting champions from legitimate injury is paramount and that Drew crossed clear boundaries that required immediate termination. Others contend that WWE created this situation by encouraging increasingly violent confrontations and that firing Drew for delivering what the storyline demanded is hypocritical and unfair. The backstage reaction among WWE wrestlers has been intense and polarized, with some expressing relief that management is finally drawing clear lines about acceptable behavior, while others are concerned that they could be next if their passionate performances are interpreted as crossing invisible boundaries that keep shifting based on management's mood and political considerations. But here's where this situation becomes even more explosive. Multiple sources are reporting that Drew McIntyre's contract included specific clauses about creative freedom and physical intensity that he believed protected him from termination for in-character violence. Drew's legal team is apparently reviewing whether WWE violated his contract by firing him for actions that fell within the agreed-upon parameters of his character and storyline obligations. The potential legal battle between Drew and WWE could expose uncomfortable truths about how the company encourages violence for entertainment purposes while simultaneously punishing performers who deliver that violence too convincingly. The contradiction at the heart of professional wrestling, promoting realistic conflict while maintaining safety, has been thrown into sharp relief by this controversial termination. Cody Rhodes' injuries from Drew's final attack were reportedly severe enough to require immediate medical evaluation and could potentially affect his ability to defend his championship in upcoming scheduled matches. The real-world consequences of Drew's actions support Triple H's decision to prioritize champion protection over storyline continuation, but they also raise questions about whether WWE's insurance and safety protocols are adequate for the violence they routinely promote. The financial implications of firing Drew McIntyre are absolutely staggering for WWE's business operations. Drew was a proven draw with significant merchandise sales, international appeal especially in the UK market, and years of potential main event matches that could have generated millions in revenue. By terminating him, WWE is gambling that the message sent about boundaries and champion protection is worth more than Drew's financial contributions. But the implications for Drew's career could be even more significant than WWE's financial losses. As a free agent with main event experience, proven drawing power, and a compelling story about being fired for passion and intensity, Drew becomes one of the most valuable available talents in all of professional wrestling. AEW, NJPW, and independent promotions are already reportedly reaching out with lucrative offers. Social media reaction has been absolutely explosive, with wrestling fans expressing everything from support for Triple H's tough stance to outrage over what many perceive as an overreaction that punishes a performer for doing exactly what WWE's storytelling encouraged. The polarized response has generated massive engagement and discussion that will drive viewership for WWE's next shows as fans tune in to see how the company addresses this situation. The precedent set by this firing could fundamentally change how WWE wrestlers approach physical storytelling and rivalry intensity. If Drew can be fired for taking things too far, will other wrestlers become more cautious and less willing to deliver the authentic emotion and violence that makes wrestling compelling? The chilling effect on performance could ironically make WWE's product less engaging while attempting to make it safer. Other wrestlers are reportedly having emergency meetings with their representatives to review contract language about creative freedom, physical expectations, and termination clauses. The uncertainty created by Drew's firing has generated anxiety throughout the roster about whether their own passionate performances could be interpreted as fireable offenses if management decides they've crossed invisible lines. Triple H's reputation as a performer-friendly executive who understands wrestling intensity has been significantly challenged by this decision. Many wrestlers who viewed him as someone who would protect them from corporate overreach are now questioning whether the game has become too corporate himself, prioritizing liability management over the authentic emotion that makes professional wrestling special. The long-term storytelling implications are fascinating because WWE now has to explain Drew's absence while maintaining the intensity and stakes of their championship picture. Do they acknowledge the firing as part of the storyline, creating meta-commentary about boundaries and consequences? Or do they ignore it and hope audiences accept Drew's disappearance without explanation? Paul Triple H Levesque's position as WWE's chief content officer may be strengthened or weakened by this decision depending on how it affects business metrics over the coming months. If ratings and revenue remain strong, the firing will be viewed as tough but necessary leadership. If numbers decline, critics will argue that personal feelings and overprotection of Cody Rhodes cost WWE one of its most valuable assets. Quick question for the comments: do you think Triple H was right to fire Drew McIntyre for going too far, or was this a massive overreaction that WWE will regret? Let me know your honest opinion below, and here's another one: where should Drew McIntyre go next? AEW, NJPW, back to the independent scene, or should he try to get reinstated to WWE? Drop your predictions in the comments.